Let me start. Hello, guys. Welcome. I've got a great friend here, Mr. Sam Stickney. Right, he's a great friend of mine. Sam, thank you so much for joining us here. Okay, straight from Vermont. Is Vermont where you are at the moment?
Yeah, Vermont in the northeast of the United States. Thank you, Leo, for having me. Great to see you.
Fantastic. Sam has participated in the Fool's immersions in Novo Hamburgo, so he's even given one workshop for us at that time, which was a Bitcoin workshop, and it was one of the inspirations. And since Sam knows so much about so many, he has been watching Bitcoin for quite a while. Then I thought to invite him and ask him a few questions. I will go slow because I know that some of you guys are learning the language. Okay, so let's start. First, Sam, can you just give us a little introduction of your personal life? Where you were born, a little bit about your family, and some of your hobbies today.
Sure. So I was born in Vermont, which is in the northeast of the United States, north of New York City and Boston. Very beautiful place. And I grew up kind of around a dairy farm in a very small town, on a dirt road.
Your parents were farmers or not necessarily?
My father's a dairy farmer.
Dairy farmer, great. Dairy,
So
guys. Dairy is milk-based products, right? Like milk, yogurt,
cheese.
Nice. And so, did you grow up in this rural countryside environment as well?
Very rural, a lot different than when most people think of the United States, because there's not a lot going on.
Nice.
But very peaceful as well, very peaceful. And then in high school, I had the opportunity to go to Spain. It totally blew my mind, and I kind of became addicted to traveling. So since I've finished university, which I did here in Vermont, I've been pretty much traveling the world for 10 years.
That's amazing.
And in those 10 years, I've started living winters in Florianopolis, Brazil. And I met Leo through a good friend of ours, Oscar, who I worked with here in Vermont. And then we all met up in Rio Grande do Sul.
And Sam, you speak Portuguese, right? Which today we won't be able to explore too much, but for sure, guys, he has a fantastic Portuguese. Okay, he's got a Brazilian girlfriend, so he's able to practice a lot, right? But it's amazing how you master, because Portuguese is a really difficult language. How did you feel in the first few moments where you were learning? Was it extremely tough?
Yeah, the first time I went to Spain, I thought I had a good grasp on Spanish after studying for 2 years, and I'll never forget the experience of making my first purchase, and I had brought this bag of chips to the counter, and the lady said the price, and I said, "What? Okay?" And she said the price, and I said, "Okay?" And she said the price, and I just gave her my biggest bill in my wallet, and I had to trust her. And so for languages, for sure, in the beginning, it's very intimidating and it's a big learning curve. But the more time you spend kind of learning and meeting other people that are learning, the more you understand that it's quite, maybe one of the most beautiful things in the world to learn another language and be able to communicate with that many more people in the world. Like Portuguese, for example, has the entire population of Brazil and Portugal and parts of Africa. And English, of course, is, worldwide. So yeah, language for me has been like a portal into lots of Latin America. I've spent time in Mexico, traveled, backpacked almost to every country in Latin America now. And yeah, kind of made Brazil my second home.
That's great. And so, when was the first time in which you were introduced to the idea of Bitcoin? And remember, Bitcoin, guys, is been going on since 2009. And when was the first time you heard about Bitcoin?
Heard about it? I'd probably heard it mentioned, before I really actually heard about it. My brother and his friend were involved in Bitcoin quite early, maybe in 2010, 2011. But I was young at the time, you know, I was in college. And then in 2000,
2010, 2011, your brother got involved. So, and
yeah,
he's
so
a coder, or no, it has nothing to do with this kind of coding and
my brother actually mined Bitcoins. So for those who don't know, what he did was run a computer, and that computer helps to decentralize the network, and in doing so, it earns Bitcoins. So my brother was mining Bitcoin super early when it was very cheap to run these computers. Now it's very expensive. There's a lot of competition. And he made a lot of Bitcoins very early and then sold them very early for much,
yeah.
much, much, much less than they're
Yeah,
worth today.
and there's that story, which is a very famous story of the first purchase. It's not Sam's brother, but there's one guy that
Yeah,
bought
yeah.
pizza, right?
Yeah, he bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoins,
Which
which
today
today is
is
$100
about a
million.
$100 million. So the
Yeah.
guy, not Sam's brother, but this guy bought a pizza at that time because nobody, the value was very tiny. So he gave a few thousand, but was, you know, that pizza today is worth $100 million. So there's many of these stories, but this is also about the price of Bitcoin, right? And but at that time there was no, the price was not even, you know, in 2011, 2012, the price was it was so tiny. We were talking about a few dollars, a couple dollars, cents sometimes, you know. So and when you heard about this project that was going on, when was the, because I think there's a moment in Bitcoin as we learn and we start learning, and it's like okay, but there's a click, there's a moment where you go, ah, I see the possibilities, you know. When was that for you, and what kind of happened to?
So following that, I was kind of working summer jobs and traveling around the world, and my brother's good friend invited me to work at a Bitcoin exchange, a startup in Santiago, Chile, because I speak pretty good Spanish, or pretty good at the time, Portuguese as well. And he kind of sold me on the idea of Bitcoin. He got me to work for him for free, you know, and I kind of looked at it as an adventure. And one of my best friends came as well, and you know, we tried to launch a company out of our living room in this apartment in Santiago, and the company never got off the ground. But I worked for him for 6 months, and this guy is, in all senses of the word, a genius, and he understands Bitcoin 100 times more than I ever will. But over these 6 months, I started to learn about Bitcoin, and the price started to move like crazy. Um, that was the end of 2013 when
And
Bitcoin went from around 100 to 1200, like quite rapidly.
yes, from 100 to 100. So of course, every time the price moves, there's a boom, right, in
Yeah,
the industry. But it's interesting, I think, to note that one of the reasons in which you were invited to this opportunity, which is working for free, but it's learning, you know, and I think that this is the real value of it. And you were
yeah,
invited. One of the reasons was because of your language skills, and I think this is
yeah,
what you're saying about language opens doors. So, you know, you had the experience in learning
of course.
Spanish, and that kind of opened up a whole world that you didn't even imagine.
Yeah,
So I understand. So you had a pretty much a university degree on Bitcoin in the very early days, right? A university degree. That's interesting.
yeah,
And how long did you stay there? You stayed 6 months, and then what about
yeah.
afterwards? What happened afterwards?
So I worked for this company for 6 months, and the company never really got off the ground. But it was 6 months of being fully immersed in the Bitcoin community, reading everything going on. And this is before there was lots of media talking about Bitcoin. It was kind of like a thing apart from the rest of the world, much more than it is today. Like now everyone has at least heard of the word Bitcoin. And back then, you know, no one knew what it was. So quite different times. And I think if you start to understand Bitcoin, it's like a never ending, they call it the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You can never really fully learn everything about Bitcoin because it's constantly being grown and developed and changing. And so to this day, I'm still learning, and it's one of the things I love most in the world. Yesterday, I think I listened to 4 hours of Bitcoin podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same thing. Like I discovered in 2017, and when I did, I became obsessed by trying to understand what this thing actually was. And anyway, it certainly shifted my perspective on a variety of different areas. And I see this sort of beginning. I still think is beginning, even though what you're talking about, that's insane beginning. That's the very beginning. That's your time is the equivalent of, I don't know, 1970s, 80s internet, and whilst I got into the 90s. But it's absolutely incredible. And so you started, so you were working in this company in Chile, right, on Bitcoin, and you said that there was not many people knew about it. I remember you mentioned once that you said that the first time you saw some news, of like a big newspaper, a big talking about Bitcoin, I was like, oh my God,
Yeah, so in 2013, even a negative Bitcoin article on a big website or in a big paper would be extremely exciting for the Bitcoin world, just because the name is getting out there for the first time. And so we've come a long way since then. I still think we're very much in the beginning, and this thing is, I personally think it's one of the most fascinating and maybe the most important thing happening in the world. And a lot of people don't realize it.
You've as well been traveling the world. Have you been able to see Bitcoin communities in different parts of the world, or different businesses that transact in Bitcoin? What is the response and the sign that you've seen around the world in this Bitcoin community?
You meet people for sure when you go around and it gets mentioned. It's kind of like being a part of some sort of group. If someone's a Bitcoiner, then you have this understanding that they're with you, and they have this kind of view of the world that Bitcoin could help to make it better. But yeah, I've bought flights with Bitcoin. I've paid for hotels. Sometimes I like to find a restaurant in a new city that will accept Bitcoin. In Brazil, one of my favorite acai places accepts Bitcoin, which is very nice.
That's great. Yeah, I know. I heard that Florianopolis is a hub of. There's a lot of businesses that accept Bitcoin. Yeah. Florianopolis.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't want to spend your Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
You prefer to keep it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is a view that, Bitcoin you can see as cash, you can see as gold, digital gold, you can see as almost like the internet, a system where you can, it goes beyond money. And in the videos, guys, I talk a lot about, there's this money application, which is, I think, the first application in which Bitcoin really showed its value. But the possibilities are growing every single month, right? We're talking about ways of storing and doing smart contracts, being able to transact with machines. There's a variety of applications. How do you see? What's your point of view on what Bitcoin is for you?
I think it's evolving. What it was 10 years ago, it's changed 5 years, and then today it's different, and in 5 years it will be different again. I try not to define it. Some people really prefer for it to be the internet of money, meaning you can do little transactions and buy coffee. Other people say it's only supposed to be used as a store of value, much like gold, kind of like an alternative to your country's currency. I love it all, and I kind of just let it evolve. And I think, as it's open sourced and decentralized, it will be what it needs to be, so.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something interesting. Bitcoin, one Bitcoin can be subdivided, I believe it's 16 digits. Am I right?
Eight digits.
Eight digits, yeah. So 8 digits.
Yeah.
So you can go all the way to, I believe it's 1 Satoshi. Is this the smallest unit? Yeah. So 1 Satoshi is 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So you get 1 Bitcoin divided by 100 million, and you got 1 Satoshi. So you got smaller units. And for the internet, it's really interesting because you can do tiny payments. So for example, in real or in dollar, we can only do payments that go at a minimum 1 cent, right? But you could do a fraction of a cent, 1,000th of a cent. And I think that has different as well applications if you think of the possibilities of that, right?
Yeah, and the idea of machine payments. Once you get going on that,
once you get exactly.
out there.
And Sam, I wanted to give the guys, of course, this conversation we could go on for half an hour and an hour. I wanted to give them just a little bit of an idea of someone that has been involved with Bitcoin for a long time, and we see that it's almost completing a decade. Your involvement with Bitcoin, which is insane. There's not many people that are involved with Bitcoin with such a, and especially involved with a company at that time when it wasn't, nobody actually knew anything about it. If you think today, some people know, at that time, nobody. So I want to give them just a little bit. Of course, guys from the community, I'm gonna put Sam's Instagram there later on. So if you want to ask him anything, if any doubts that you have, please get in touch with him. Okay. But I want to thank you for your time. I know you were in Vermont there, just arrived there a few days ago, and getting back to your home life. But the FOOS is always welcome, both the community and our actual place here, for whenever you want to return.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leo. I appreciate it. Like, for me, I love talking about Bitcoin. I could talk about it all day. So no trouble at all. And happy to contribute to the FOOS. I think it's an awesome company, awesome idea.
Amazing. Thank you, Sam. See you soon.